Okay guys, we're going to cut a back piece for the control panel. It's going to span from the inside edge here all the way across to the inside edge back here. And the way I've got it, I'm going to set it on top of the bottom piece here, and that'll attach in. And there's probably going to be some cutouts in it. I want to make it out of one continuous piece across there, but there'll probably be some cutouts or maybe one large hole or something in there for the wires and stuff to come out and go to the rest of the panel. Hey guys, we're back out at the old work table and it's getting very dark on me. I was going to try to cut a piece out of that old scrap piece there, and it ended up being too small, and so I'm not really going to insert that clip. But anyway, this piece right here is a 4x4 foot sheet, and I originally think I was going to do the whole control panel out of this, but I was able to salvage some of the old wood to do most of the parts. Well, just that last part we're going to try to cut out of this. I think we're going to start from over here. We have to go up at least 6 inches, and we have to go across 28 3/4. So we're going to cut it a little big, probably go maybe 7 inches by probably about 30, and that'll give us some leeway if we need to true up some edges or something like that on the table saw. Okay, that corner caught just a little bit, so I had to start the saw back up. But it looks pretty good. I'm going to go make it look cleaner on the table saw. Okay guys, we're going to measure out 28 and 5/8 over to around here, and 6 1/8. So we're going to cut this part right here away. We're going to cut this part right here away. This is our factory edge. That's our factory edge and our factory corner. So we're going to keep this part, cut away some here, cut away some here. Let's see what happens right there. Looks almost dead on, guys. I'm going to go ahead and make the other cut before I go in and check that cut. I feel pretty confident it's okay. So that was a 28th and 5/8, and now we got to do 6 1/8. And again, that's just to give us a guide to get started, because once you start cutting with a table saw, you pretty much just got to go on through and keep it square. Looks real close. We're going to try that. Once we get this cut, we're probably going to have to come back and cut an 80-degree bevel across that just to make it match up with the front of the control panel. The way I measured it, I measured up at the very back of those 80-degree slanted pieces, and that was 6 1/4 inch. And 6 1/8 of an inch. And then you come down from there, and it's at a slant, so it'll be starting there and it'll be coming down. So we're going to have to take a little notch off of that. Let's get this cut done. Again, working in a very tight space. I ain't hardly got enough room. Need to come back a little more, I believe. There's just another piece of blocking. Use that for supporting the corners, reinforcing them on the inside. really, really good. Now let's go inside and see how it fits. Okay guys, there we go. We got the back piece cut. Fits in real well. I'm just going to come back, and right here, if you can see that little bit of overhang from the back piece there, I'm just going to come back and bevel that down just a little bit on each side. It will pretty much be done with the control panel except for the very top piece, and that should be the easiest. And then assembly, of course. Hey guys, today I'm going to try to go ahead and assemble the pieces of the control panel box that I've cut out over the past few days, and I'm going to do it with finish nails and wood glue. Got some supplies here. Got some Elmer's Carpenter's wood glue, and it says bond stronger than wood, sandable and paintable, easy water cleanup. Well, that's pretty much the way you want to go if you want to make some furniture. If you ever watch Norm Abram on the New Yankee Workshop, he always uses wood glue with his furniture, and I mean, he's, you know, a great carpenter. I'm not a great carpenter, but hey, if he uses wood glue, looks good enough for me. I thought about putting the control panel together with screws, like the screws that I'm going to put some of the other pieces in the main cabinet with, but I kind of like working with finish nails, and I've got a little bit of experience with it, just doing stuff here around the house when we were building the house, and I've got a lot of nails left over from when we did build my house, and I started going through them, and I was going to try to figure out what I wanted to use. Well, came across several boxes of these grip right fasteners. These are bright finish nails. These are 8D, 2.5 inch nails, bright finish nails, and they're basically used for finishing work, molding, anything like that, stuff that's going to be seen. You can sink the head down below. Let me show you what one looks like. That right there is a finish nail. If you've never seen one, I'm sure you have, most of you guys. But the head on it is kind of like a small bead almost. It's just big enough to hammer in and then get a nail set on and then drive under the surface of the wood slightly, and then you come back with some type of wood putty or wood filler and fill in the hole, and you could sand it down and then paint over it. And usually you would never even know nails were there. But these were 8Ds, and I came across several boxes of these that I had left over from when we were doing trim and building the house. And these are really huge. These are not the size that I want to use. Let me show you a panel off of the control box. And again, this is just dry fitted here. But here's a panel off the control box, and it's maybe just slightly less than 3/4 of an inch thick. And here's one of these nails. You see that it's probably 3 times as long as the wood is thick, and that's just really too big of a monster, and really the thickness of the nail is just too much for what we need for this. And so I got to looking around, and of course I found the 8D bright finish nails. And just show you the difference real quick. Here's an 8D 2 3/8 inch coated sinker. It's almost the same size nail as a finish nail, but this is a sinker, and a lot of people might call it a common nail, and it's like a framing nail. And you see they're almost about the same size, about the same length, and just about the same thickness on the shaft. Maybe a little more for the common nail or the sinker, but the head's the big difference. This right here, it's got a slight taper to it, and when you hammer it, you can't hammer it flush to the surface of the wood, and you know it won't protrude much, but you're going to see the head, so it's not made for finish work. And most of you guys probably already know that, but I was just going to show you that. And those were 8D coated sinkers, or common nails I came across, and I came across some very small those are very small common nails. Those could be used in some types of paneling and stuff. I would just probably use it to hang a picture. It's pretty small, but little tiny pieces of trim that doesn't matter if the head shows or something you're putting up. You know, some people put up lattice paneling with that, stuff like that you might want to put under a deck or a porch or something. And then I came across a huge box of these, and I thought this was what I was going to use. I had about half a box of these or so left over from some trim I was doing. And these are 6D bright finish nails. These are 2-inch, so they're a little smaller than the 8-inch. I'll show you a comparison again. These are the 6D. They're not quite as thick and they're not quite as long. So you got about a 1/2 inch more length on the 8D, and they're a little bit thicker. And I thought this is what I was going to end up using because I didn't think I had anything smaller. And I was a little bit depressed because it still looked a little large for what I wanted. It's still over twice the length of the thickness of the wood. And you know, I'm just a little bit worried if I'm hammering these in a little bit close to the edge of the wood, I might get some splitting or something. Or that when I come back to cover up the holes, or just, you know, whatever size nail set I use might be a little larger hole than what I want, which anything will cover up. But you know, I don't want to use anything too large if I can go with something smaller and get just as much holding power. And then finally, after I found this box, I was about to give up, and my eyes caught on my supply shelf upstairs. I actually had a box of electro galvanized finished 4D finish nails. And the electro galvanized, it just got a slight coating on them that makes them a little bit resistant to corrosion. You still probably wouldn't want to use these outside for anything. They have like plain galvanized, which is a little bit more corrosion resistant for using for projects outside. But these are probably what we're going to end up using. A little bit smaller steel. And I guess with a little bit of corrosion protection, that might be kind of good, because I mean, if you were using this on a control panel and you had it in an arcade, there'll be drinks getting spilt on it and stuff like that. Nothing like that's going to happen with this type of main cabinet I've got in my house. I'm going to take care of it a lot better than that. But still, hey, a little bit of protection. That's not going to hurt anything. But I'll go ahead and show you the comparison again, side by side, with a 6D and an 8D finish nail. There's our 8D again. Here's the 6D. See if I can hold these where you can see them. And then here's the 4. And you can see that the shaft is slightly smaller and the length is about 1/2 inch less even, so it's almost a full inch less than an 8D. And it looks like it's going to be perfect for this project. If you look at the piece of wood, like I say, about 3/4 of an inch or so, looks like it's just about double. If you look at the length of it, just about double. So it would go through one thickness of this, and probably the tip of it would just peek out if you had 2 thicknesses of this wood. And since most of this is going to be put together at kind of right angles, you know, you're going to go through like this, and you're going to hit on the butt end of another piece of wood. So it's going to be okay, except for maybe our 45, where we 45 the front. When we go in, we're going to go in like that. And you don't want to get too close to the edge, because you'll really splinter your wood. You know, you want to get some meat of the wood, get back a ways whenever you're driving these, and get into the second piece of wood, but you don't want to go too far this way either, or you'll splinter out on the back side of that other piece. So you want to keep it just about centered. Knowing me, I'll probably just put a slight angle on it and drive it home into the other piece, and set it below the surface of the wood and come back with some filler. But also, when you're setting it, you don't want to set it too far with the nail set, because you could end up, especially if you didn't go perfectly perpendicular to this piece of wood, if you didn't go perfectly perpendicular from this into the next piece, if it's at an angle and you set it too deep, you're going to end up coming out the front of the next piece that this is butted up against. But enough of that. I just wanted you to see what I was using. And so we're going to use some 4D electro galvanized finish nails. I'm going to use some Elmer's wood glue, and I actually have a new 3-piece set of nail sets. Probably going to use the smallest one. It's got 3 different sizes there, and this is the smallest tip. That's probably what I want to use. I'll make the smallest hole possible and come back with some wood filler later and fill that in and sand it down, and should work really good. And of course, got a trusty old hammer. Had this thing ever since I built the house. It probably put half my house together, besides the air nailers that we were using. So but this one got a lot of use back then. And I want to show you, I don't have any real good long clamps to be doing woodwork like this. I have some small clamps, and you've seen those in some of the projects where I've clamped a board down and cut something outside. But I've got an idea of how to do this, and hopefully I won't need any clamps. I'm thinking I won't, but I'll show you what I'm thinking of doing. Let me get these pieces of wood out of the way. And forgive my appearance like a mountain man. I haven't shaved in days, so I look rough. But what I'm thinking of doing, this is the lower half of the main cabinet. The lower half on the back. And it was just, you know, a cover that I'm going to replace. It's a piece of MDF, or I guess melamine, something like that. It's about similar. And it's just going to either get tossed out, or I'm going to use scrap pieces of it, get some strips off of it for something. And I said, hey, you know, and my wife's going to kill me if she knows I'm putting this dirty thing on the kitchen table, but I have wiped it down a little bit. But it's been probably in arcades and stuff for years. It's like a early 1980s cabinet, so it's scuffed up and it's a little bit stained and dirty, but I've wiped it down. There's nothing that's going to get off of it on the table. But I'll wash the table later if she sees this video. She's gone on a trip to North Carolina, and she should be back in a couple hours. She'll probably come in while I'm filming this. But anyway, we're going to use this and not exactly make a jig, but we're going to use it to hold down the bottom plate. We're going to use it to hold this down. And probably going to fasten it on like that. Yeah, hush bird. And we're gonna nail it down temporarily. We'll probably use some of those small finish nails, and I'm gonna drive them in at an angle, maybe about a 30-degree angle or so, and put maybe 2 or 3 right here. And again, those holes will be covered later. You know, we can come back and cover them with some wood filler and sand them. Or, you know, since this is going to have a lot of stuff mounted in here, there may be an I-Pac mounted covering up the holes or something like that. But we don't want to make no more than maybe about 4 or 6 holes, and drive some of those nails in temporarily into this piece, and it'll hold this base plate in place. And then we can come back, and on top of it we can assemble the control panel. Once it's mounted to this where it won't move around too much, and this has got some weight to it compared to this, then we can start nailing and gluing this piece on and get this over here, and then come back and maybe put the other piece in, and then the front. Now that I think of it, I'll probably put the front on first. I think that's something good to start with. Probably put the front panel on first and get it lined up as perfect as I can, so the 45s look great with the corners of this piece of wood for the bottom. And I'll nail it and glue it in and get it where I think it just, you know, looks as perfect as possible. Then I'll start putting the sides in. And as I do these, since this is attached, you know, I've got something to nail against. It's not going to be sliding around on me too much, you know. This piece has more weight than just the bottom piece. And what I could also do is, after I glue that piece and nail it, and it's up against this, I can actually come in with, like, let's say a filler strip. Pretend this is a filler strip, and butt it against this temporarily and nail down into the filler strip, and that will hold this piece in place until the glue sets. And the nails are going to be holding it anyway, but that's just extra assurance that this is not going to move. And then later, when everything's put together and it's sit for a few hours, you could just pop those nails out that you put in temporarily, take the filler strip out of play, and it's kept pressure against there until the glue set up really good. And then any other filler strips, you could do that on the side panels. You could have a filler strip down here holding this in place just like a clamp. And it's not putting a lot of pressure against it, but as you nail it, if you've got it all the way against there and you nail the nail at a slight angle, it's going to put a little bit of pressure against the wood as you drive the nail home. And once you take all the filler strips off and everything, you take a couple of the temporary nails out that you put in the bottom plate here, everything should be glued and set up pretty good. So that's how I want to try to do it. And I'm going to cut right now. I'm going to get a couple of things started, and I'll come back and show you some more. Since the wood glue is very strong, you need to be a little bit careful. Now when we go assembling all this together, like I said, if it's nailed in place and you go putting wood glue on here, probably on both surfaces, putting it against there and nailing it, you've got to think, hey, what's to keep the glue from setting onto this piece that's here temporarily, and we can't get it up later when we pull the nails off. because it may make a permanent bond. Well, I'm going to try something, and this is just totally an experiment, so you guys will find out as much as I will, if this is going to work. But I'm going to put some wax paper down. Just got some plain wax paper here, and I'm going to put some wax paper down before I nail that piece in place. And what that should do is put a barrier between the bottom piece of wood and this piece of MDF, and that way if the glue does seep out, the only thing it can possibly bond to is the wax paper, and you could probably peel the wax paper just straight off. If you can, if it sticks a little bit, then that's okay, because at least it won't be stuck to the piece of MDF. You can just take and sand it off a little bit. But we're going to go ahead and do that, and I'm just going to stretch out, get 2 lengths of it. And rip it the wrong way. But I need 2 lengths because the width of the board is about the same as this. And yes, honey, I'm using your wax paper. That's good enough. And it's okay if it's a little bit loose, because once you put the board down and run some nails through it, it's not going to move. But there we go, wax paper. Go ahead and set the board in place on it, and hey, we got us a coating there that the glue shouldn't get through to the MDF. And now we can run some nails in to hold this in place. And we're going to use the 6D nails, and it does go in deep enough that it could probably slightly penetrate this MDF and go into the table underneath, and I would be, murdered. So I want to run them at an angle, and I'm not going to run them all the way down and leave the head sticking up a little bit. And you can do this any way you want. If you know that on this bottom plate you're definitely going to have something in a certain spot, a support or something, that's where you can put the temporary nails to hold it in place. That way the nail holes will be covered up later. I'm not for certain what's going to be covered up here when I get this all together. I know there's going to be some blocking kind of near some of the corners and edges and stuff. But right now, I'm going to come in a little ways from the edge, so I'll be away from the pieces that I've got to assemble, and so I'll have enough room to get the hammer or a pair of pliers in later and pull the nails up. You don't want to get too close to the edge, because it might be kind of hard to get in there. You should be able to get in from this side, but just leave yourself a few inches. It doesn't matter. You could do it even dead center, and it'd probably be okay. But I'd still come out a little ways just to get some bite over here near the ends of the wood. So I'm going to run just a couple in over here. Okay, and just lift up on it to make sure that first nail didn't penetrate. Feel underneath. Everything feels good, nothing underneath there. It's not sticking out, scratching up the table. My wife would kill me, because this she got from her great aunt, who has now passed away. Shouldn't be doing this in here anyway, but it's dark outside and I don't have a workshop. Second one. And like I say, I'm leaving these up about probably between 1/4 and 1/2 inch, not that much, probably just a little more than 1/4 of an inch, just so I can pull them out later. But you do need to make sure they get a bite in the piece underneath. So there's 2, and we'll put 2 opposing ones and put them at an angle, so that does take up a little bit of the distance, how long the nail is. It makes it almost like you're using a shorter nail. Plus, it's like if you do it at opposing angles, it gives it more bite on that piece underneath. And if you're moving around somehow with this, when you're trying to attach the other pieces, it's not just going to lift up and pull straight out of that MDF, because that MDF probably doesn't hold nails anywhere near as well as the plywood. So we'll put another in about the same location on the opposite side at an angle, and we're angling back towards that other. check and make sure you didn't go into your table underneath. Looking good. Put another one in. Yeah, that's pretty good. And be patient, take your time. If you've not nailed a lot before, practice on a scrap piece of wood before you ruin a bunch of nails or ruin your good wood that you've already cut and got just exactly like you want. I've nailed a good bit. I'm pretty comfortable with it. I'm not an expert or anything, but I've driven a few nails in my time. So if you haven't done it before, just practice on some old wood and get a few nails and hammer them in, pull them out, hammer them in, pull them out, you know, whatever you want to do. And until you get used to it, and until the hammer feels comfortable in your hand, and that way you won't mess up the final pieces that you're working on. Well, to be totally honest with you, that right there's probably going to hold it pretty good, but there's a very slight bow to this piece of wood that I've got, this piece of plywood, and plywood's going to have a slight bow to it. Any kind of natural wood probably will. This stuff right here, the MDF, it's usually almost perfectly flat, so that is better for making control panels and stuff out of sometimes, I guess. But I wanted to go with real wood. I wanted to go with at least plywood. It's got a slight bow to it, and so I feel it bowing just slightly up. So I want to drive a couple here in the center to help pull it down a little bit. That way when we attach the pieces and get all the nails and glue in and stuff like that, it's going to force this piece of wood to be more flat. And sometimes that's what you want. So I want to drive one right about here, and I want to drive it that way at an angle. Press down on it a little bit. Yeah, and I'm going to go ahead and check, make sure it didn't run out on the bottom. Feels good. One more. And I'm going to drive it, instead of that angle, I'm going to drive it the opposite angle right here. Now if you've got a dad with a good shop, he's got all kind of tools and stuff, he may have all the clamps you need to be able to do something like this without making any type of contraption like this. But this, in my mind, seemed like a good idea, and I'm like, I'm going to try it and see if it works, and I think it'll work out okay. And if you haven't ever used those clamps, if your dad does have some good clamps, maybe you don't want to take the time to learn how to use them if you're only doing one project or something. Maybe you can learn later after you get your MAME machine done. But I think we're set to start putting the pieces together. Says on the bottle of wood glue you need to apply it to both surfaces, so like setting the front piece, which we're probably going to do, you need to put some down through here, and you want to put some down through on the piece that you're going to attach to it, sandwich them together, and put you at least one nail in to kind of hold it so it's not shifting around. And you don't have to drive it all the way home. If you think you might move it, you can pull it back out. But drive it at least about halfway in so it kind of holds it, make sure it's not shifting this way or that way, and then start driving the permanent nails in. But try to do it before the glue starts setting up, because some of this stuff sets up a little quicker, you know. It says sets fast, bond stronger than wood. So if it sets fast, I don't know how fast they think fast is, but let me just make sure that this is coming out okay. It's a brand new bottle. Yeah, very liquidy. Get our piece. Make sure we get it oriented like we want. And with these mitered pieces, this first piece going in place is going to affect all the other ones. So you really want to get it as close as you can. But if you have any gaps, like if you have mitered corners or stuff, you can fill it in with some wood filler. Or you could either just put a little extra glue in there when you're assembling the pieces, and it's going to fill those gaps in a pretty good bit. And then later you can come back and sand it a little bit and paint it, because this is probably all going to be painted, and there's probably going to be logos or stickers or something over this by the time it's over with. But Let me get a paper towel. Wipe that little bit of glue up right quick before I end up getting it on my arm or something.